All right, good morning, good morning. On a Monday, September 23rd, welcome on in. See some people in here. Hello, everybody. YouTube, Facebook, X, Good morning, 6Bs from Las Vegas. Mark on Facebook. Must be a good place to wake up. How's everybody doing? How was your weekend? Hope it was great. Watched some games yesterday. I got to get a recap of the odds makers. I don't remember who had who. I know Slick can't be too happy because his Cowboys they got some work to do on the defensive side of the ball. They are bad news. There was a reason Baltimore was favored in that game, even on the road. John, good morning on YouTube. Moon Pie on YouTube. Good morning. I am doing good. How are you? Gary on YouTube. Make sure you hit the like, thumbs up, smash the like on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you get notified every time I go live. I saw on YouTube we just crossed over 15,000. Next stop, hopefully 100, but I'll be happy with 20 next. Good morning, everybody on YouTube, Facebook. Facebook's I think Facebook just crossed 117,000. Very happy about that. X continues to grow as well. Rebecca on Facebook, your Minnesota Vikings do look good. It's amazing when you look around this league at the quarterbacks who were thought of as total busts when they were in other places who have now gone around the league to other places. And even the backup who played Tennessee yesterday, Green Bay. That Green Bay kid from yesterday, Malik Anderson, something like that. He was Tennessee's third-string quarterback. They cut him, never gave him a shot. He goes out there and absolutely smokes Tennessee yesterday. That kid's got to feel just absolutely on top of the world. Sam Darnold, obviously, as well. And there's many of them. It's pretty unbelievable what's going on this early on in the league this year. Michelle says, go Lions, morning from Michigan. Yep. Lions wanted to get that bad taste of that loss out of their mouth, and they did. Malik Willis. Thank you, Randy. Malik Willis. I mean, Tennessee cuts him. He comes back and smokes him yesterday. Good for him. Tennessee's in trouble. They got, huge problems there. All right, so glad everybody's in. Kate on Facebook says, Michigan, odds makers' prediction on my Michigan game were dead wrong. Hail to the victors. Yeah, Michigan looked good. Dave Portnoy was happy. Obviously, big Michigan graduate, alum. Supports the blue, obviously. He was happy. USC looked a little soft. Morning, Sharon on X. Looking forward to LFSXB tonight. Well, Sharon, I got some good news and bad news. LFSXB will be on tonight, but the bad news is that President Trump starts speaking in the 7 o'clock hour, so most likely he's going to roll into at least our first hour. I don't know if the whole first hour, but certainly some of it, so you won't see us until he's done. Andrew on Facebook, hello, good morning, glad you're here. Well, I hope everybody had a good weekend, so we'll just go through some things I've been looking at. I guess we could start with the markets, as we always do. Dow futures are green this morning, as the markets still try to grapple with this rate cut, 50 basis point rate cut. And to see what's going on. Dow futures up slightly, 39. The Dow, S&P up 1025, NASDAQ up 43. 7 minutes till the opening, so we'll see what happens at the opening bell. Crypto, Bitcoin's up a little bit. Ethereum up. Ethereum is probably at that point in the market cycle now where it starts to outperform Bitcoin, if I had to guess. I still think crypto has a little bit of a rocky road to the end of the year. Maybe till the election, till they see what happens in the election. But we'll keep an eye on that. But as far as the market goes, Dow futures, everything looks green across the board right now. And we'll see if that See if that holds up. I don't think there's any other news right now. Treasury yields are a little changed as investors assess growth outlook. Yeah, everybody's trying to figure out how these rate cuts will ripple through the economy. Oh, look at this. What do you know? I go back to the get rid of Kevin McCarthy days, and I think about the flack I took in saying that I had no Kevin McCarthy fan, and I could see why people at the time were PO'd. But I just warned, I believe, that we would look back at some point and think we're probably worse off now than we would have been if we just stuck to our guns. And you could say that about the Republican Party in many ways, for many things. But this latest example of this speaker might be the greatest one ever. I mean, we warned on day one, after we decided this was the road that we wanted to go, those who got McCarthy thrown out, that Speaker Johnson on day one, walking through the rotunda, was asked about money for Ukraine, where McCarthy was pretty much set on no more money for Ukraine. And Johnson said, well, no, it's high on the list. And I thought, wait, it's what? It's high on the list. And it's been one disaster after another since then. And I know a lot of people know about what we're going to get, what we always get from the Republicans, which is a clean CR, because as we've said, until we're blue in the face, the Republicans are more worried about the shutdown than they are the spending or anything else. And they're proving themselves once again to be exactly that. Now, most people, I don't know, caught this part of it, though. And that is that the Speaker is axing the Trump voting restrictions in the new government spending bill. So not only are they going to give Pelosi, Schumer, Biden, Harris their continued spending levels that everybody was up in arms about when McCarthy cut the deal, they're just going to continue that. But not only that, but Johnson's going to find some key amendments that I don't think most people realize are in there. The bill would fund the government through December 20th, just enough time to get through the election, and does not include any part of the SAVE Act, the Trump-backed election security proposal that would require people to show proof of citizenship to register as a voter. Well, this whole SAVE Act thing, as Thomas Massey has pointed out multiple times and others have, seems like theater a little bit, because the SAVE Act already passed as standalone legislation, I believe, in the House and should have gone to the Senate. So we're taking something that I believe is already passed and using it as, again, theater to put in this bill. And I think 19 Republicans voted against it. But this is just where we always, we could go back through the years I've done live from Studio 6B since 2015. And we can go through every spending, any time this has come up. I can't think of one time in the last 9 years that the Republicans have ever won this fight. Ever got concessions for anything and didn't just get their ass kicked around by Pelosi, Schumer, or whoever it was. Boehner got his ass kicked around. Ryan got his ass kicked around. McCarthy got it. They all end up in the same place. They give up all leverage that they have. They get nothing in return. They continue to spend and let the Democrats spend at the levels they want. And they're more afraid of the shutdown, even though we've been through the shutdown and what a shutdown actually means probably 100 times. And it's just never any different. Every time it comes up, it's never any different. The new bill would fund the government through December 20th and does not include any part of the SAVE Act, the Trump-backed election security proposal that would require people to show proof of citizenship to register as a voter. I mean, you have to ask yourself where we are when something like this even has to be proposed. Require people to show proof of citizenship to register as a voter. Well, that doesn't seem like something that's such a wild idea that it would have to be, whether passed as standalone legislation or shoved in a wannabe CR. You would think that would just kind of be. But that's where we are. In a letter to colleagues on Sunday, Johnson said the very narrow, bare-bones proposal would include only the extensions that are absolutely necessary to avoid a government shutdown. And raise your hand if you can point to anything that you think in this government that's absolutely necessary. What exactly do we need to fund in this government that's absolutely necessary? You know, you think about Biden. Biden is pretty much MIA. We don't hear from him. We barely see him. When we do see him, he looks totally cooked. The other days with Prime Minister Modi, he can't remember who he's even introducing, can't remember who he's with. I mean, he's been nowhere. He's not running the cabinet meetings anymore. Dr. Jill's running the latest one. So Biden is the president, supposedly, and he's nowhere to be found. And yet the government just rolls on. No problems. We don't hear or see of the president, but the government rolls on. So what exactly do we need to? What exactly is so important for us to fund? That's essential. It all seems to be, the deep state seems to be functioning just fine, and there certainly is no president that you could point to say, well, he's running the show. What a tight ship he's running. He's really got a handle on these departments. He's really got a handle on what's going on. And we know when it comes to a shutdown, what actually shuts down? About 13% of the government, 17% of the government. You know, the Democrats used the language. Well, they use language in many ways to win over the propaganda war. But they use language to win all these fights. They go out there in front of the cameras and say things that are just not true. When it comes to government shutdown, what's going to happen? You know, Republicans are throwing Granny off a cliff, and they want to deny Social Security. We've been through this. We've been through this. None of it's true, but it doesn't matter. Congressional Republicans and Democrats have 8 days to strike a deal on government. It's always down to the wire. You know, the next one you're going to get is right before the holidays. It's the same playbook every single year. Right before the holidays, right before it expires, Republicans end up having to cave because they're afraid of the shutdown more than they are the spending or any of the things that are in these things or any of the things that this funds. Partial shutdown on October 1st at 12:01, just a month away from the November election, when party control will be up for grabs for both the White House and the Congress. You know, I understand how important this election is on the presidential side, but this is why some of us argue for a long time that really what goes on in Washington, we probably should pay a whole lot less attention to and focus on what's going on in your state. This is why we need more governors. This is why we need to make red states as red as they make blue states blue. And if we can't do that, you know, in places where we should be able to do that, where we hold super majorities, we hold the governorship, we hold the House, we hold the state legislatures in both chambers, we need to make red states as red as they make blue states blue. Because Washington's not going to save us. Washington's getting to the point, I got to talk about the budget here in a little bit. we're getting to the point with this government and what's going on in Washington that there is no one person or one administration or one savior that's going to come save us from what's going on in Washington. It's just going to be more destruction, more destruction, more destruction if we think Washington's going to save us. There's no one person that's going to go to Washington and save us from this federal government. Can you make changes? Yeah. Can you maybe make it better? Yeah. But it would take, I don't know, at least you figure 3 terms, 12 years, 4 under Trump, 2 under whoever the next guy is, at least to, number one, save the Supreme Court, because we know that's the next thing. To deal with the budget, to deal with what's coming fiscally in this country that nobody wants to talk about, is going to be something that it's going to take some real guts to be able to tackle what's coming fiscally in this country in the next 10, 15, 20 years. We'll go through a little bit of it. We'll go through the numbers that are staggering, absolutely staggering. Johnson said, well, this is not the solution any of us prefer. It's always the same. Oh, we really want it to be tough, you know. It's the most prudent path forward under the present circumstances. Well, so again, what he's saying is that we're just afraid of the shutdown. As history has taught us and current polling affirms, shutting the government down less than 40 days from a fateful election would be an act of political malpractice. See, there's always some reason that it's not right to do it. And that's why they never do it. There's always some reason why it's not right to do it. Damon, what do you know about the UN meeting? I don't know anything about the UN meeting. I don't even know what's going on at the UN. Should I? Probably. I don't. Good morning, Damon. Looking forward to LFS 6B tonight. Yep. Thank you. Knew you were right about the speakership. All right, we'll get to your comments here in a little bit. Let's keep moving through. I don't know how many of you have seen this. I don't know much about it, but I found this interesting this morning. The biggest wild card in the presidential election, just days left until a crippling port strike paralyzes the East Coast. So for whatever reason, I was not up on this until this morning. Late last week, the CEO of Flexport, one of the largest U.S. supply chain logistics operators, warned that, quote, the biggest wild card in the presidential election that no one's talking about, the looming port strike that could shut down all East and Gulf Coast ports just 36 days before the election. With just over a week to go until D-Day, authorities are gearing up as a threatened strike by dock workers at ports along the East Coast and Gulf Coast draws closer. If you've heard about this story until just now, put a 1 in the comments. If you haven't, and this is new to you as it was to me this morning, put a 2 in the comments. I'm interested to see if any of you heard of this. I've heard no reporting on this whatsoever. Absolutely no reporting on this whatsoever. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey is coordinating with partners across the supply chain to prepare for any impacts from a possible work stoppage by workers represented by the International Longshoremen's Association as they negotiate with the United States Maritime Alliance, a Port Authority spokesman told CBS Money Watch on Friday. We urge both sides to find common ground and keep the cargo flowing for the good of the national economy. So, again, this is something that basically, the way I read it, is certainly not going to reflect well on the current administration if this affects anybody going into the election. But I just don't know how many people have heard about it. So I'm seeing a lot of 2s. I'm seeing some 1s. Seeing a lot of twos. A lot of twos. According to the union, a strike would affect ports from Maine to Texas and cripple supply chains worse than the immediate aftermath of the COVID shutdown. And here we are as the Fed just cut rates because they think they've got inflation under control, and this is knocking on the doorstep. A stoppage, the first since 1977, could involve up to 45,000 workers at ports that account for roughly 60% of U.S. shipping traffic, leading to a major disruption of shipments. Even a 2-week strike could disrupt supply chains until 2025. If goods are then forced to shift to the U.S. West Coast ports, Rabobank speculates that Asia-U.S. freight rates could leap up to $20,000, far above the peak seen in the last supply chain crisis. That would mean firms with low margins might opt not to import at all, creating empty shelves. Wonderful. So we've got 7 days to go because this says it'll shut down if there's no agreement on Monday the 30th. Should that occur, all activities, loading and unloading cargo containers and automobiles would come to a standstill while cruise ships would continue to operate. So this is certainly something worth keeping an eye on here as we get closer to the 30th. You can't, the Taft-Hartley Act gives the president the power to impose an 80-day cooling-off period to delay a strike. Biden says he doesn't intend to use it here, given the impact doing so could have on union votes. Although with the Teamsters refusing to endorse Kamala despite the union's traditional Democrat support, as the majority of its members polled now back Trump, that may be a moot point. On the other hand, every warns that the kind of strike described above would likely cripple Harris's chances come November 5th. So, very interesting. I was not up on this until this morning. If you were, good for you. But certainly something worth keeping an eye on as we head to about, it'll be a week from today. Today's the 23rd, so this says midnight. So it'll be this coming Sunday night at midnight as we turn over the week again, see if there's a deal in place here. A couple other things here. Obviously, just the news also talking about the pathetic CR that we're going to get here from House Republicans. A couple other things in just the news today. I put something up. Well, first of all, this headline: non-citizens added to state voter rolls through the DMV even after admitting lack of U.S. citizenship. And you see headlines like this, and you combine this, you look at what the Democrats are doing on the other side with their legal thugs going into all these states, as they did in 2020, Mark Elias and all, going in to change the rules right from underneath the Republicans' noses while they were asleep at the wheel. And I know Lara Trump's taken over the RNC now with Michael Whatley, and you talk to people, and some people say they're doing a great job. The president says they're doing a great job. And I just wonder where they are on these states and these things where we see these kind of things happening. What are they doing? I continually see reports, even in red swing states, saying, boy, I don't see any Trump ads at all. I see reports of door knockers on Harris's side overwhelming neighborhoods and people saying, I never see anything on the Trump side. And I don't know if their internal polling is so much different that they just don't think they need to do any of this stuff. Because if they're doing it, I don't see how everybody can be missing it. Because I just see constantly one after another saying, I just don't see. I mean, even if I take the emails and messages I get on the ads that get served throughout our platforms, all people say they see is Kamala ads. I get the emails and I see the messages, and I see the messages that Rav gets. Again, I've been through this. We don't control them. They just get served to the IP address of the person watching based on your location and where the money has been spent from these places in these states. It totally goes around us. We have no control over it. But again, if I take that as a basis, I just don't know where the money that the RNC has raised is going. And why people are not seeing any commercials. And why are these things in these states continuing to go on? And are we moving legally in these places? Non-citizens have been added to several states' voter rolls, largely through motor vehicle departments, sometimes even after they have explained they are not U.S. citizens. States have been discovering non-citizens on their voter rolls over the years, with many being added through the motor voter process at the motor vehicle departments that began with the National Voter Registration Act of 1993. If non-citizens are seeking to become naturalized citizens, then being illegally registered to vote can prevent that from occurring. An election integrity group has examined states' voter rolls for years, finding many non-citizens who are legally registered to vote across the country. Pennsylvania, California, Arizona, Texas, Ohio, Illinois. Well, some of those I would say, well, California, it is what it is. But when you look at Ohio, Pennsylvania, Arizona, those would be three states that the Trump team would want and needs to win. So if this is going on, do we have people in these states? Do we have a handle on how much this is? Do we have a handle on what's currently still going on? I don't know where they're spending the money. But if you asked me to put my fingers on it right now, I could not tell you. Jimmy says, I see 3-1 Kamala ads and Kerry Lake ads. She probably has more than that. I saw Mark Levin put a tweet out saying it's time for Republican billionaires to step up. We're getting crushed, outspent. Damon says the RNC has given up any chance of having any chance in the state of Michigan due to our governor and our Secretary of State. Our elections have been rigged in our state. I'm just saying from what I see. Well, I hope they haven't given up. I mean, they may be fighting an uphill battle, but they're fighting an uphill battle in any. Again, this is what we've said, this is why the road to 270 is so hard. Think about the states they need to win. Think about all the swing states. Arizona, Katie Hobbs. Michigan, Ava Perone. Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. That's a tough go. Ohio, Mike DeWine. It's a tough go for any Republican because they're going to be doing everything they can to make sure he doesn't win. Now, there's some positive stuff out there. Again, whatever you believe, some of the numbers out of Virginia might be pretty positive. again, the Trump team's internal polling must be way better than I think we might know, because and that's the only way to explain spending time in New York, seemingly not spending a ton on ad buys, seemingly not having a ground game that matches up to what the other side is doing. I mean, those are just the things I see. But, you know, again, everybody always says the internal polling that the campaigns get is way more sophisticated than anything that we're getting in the public. So maybe they're just relying on that. I don't know. So I was talking about this, and I just want to go through a little bit of this so you can understand what the numbers are. Because in the debate, not one question was asked about this. Not one. To either side. And both sides are responsible. And I'm not going to bore you with all the nonsense, because a lot of this you know. Debt-funded spending during the pandemic has now turned interest payments into the second largest category of federal expenditures, exceeding military spending, and set to continue growing as old debt rolls over in a higher interest rate environment, which obviously we're still in, even with the cuts. Even if they continue to cut, we're in a higher rate environment than we had been any time in the Trump administration. The federal deficit is about $2 trillion right now, 6.3% of GDP. In peacetime, during an economic expansion with low unemployment. Think about that. It'll be about $2 trillion again next year, and that's if everything goes reasonably well. The national debt grows by $1 trillion roughly every 200 days. In the ABC debate between Harris and Trump, one of whom will be the president next year, the moderators did not ask a single question about the budget, the debt, their overall tax policy. In fact, the words budget, debt, spending were never spoken by anyone in the entire debate. The moderators were following the lead of the candidates, neither of whom has any clue how to deal with any of this stuff. Well, I don't agree with that. Trump is much more situated to deal with this than she is. She's situated to pour gasoline on this fire. In the short run, the federal budget needs to be restored to some sense of normality after the pandemic spending blowout. Annualized federal expenditures in the first quarter of 2020 were $4.9 trillion. Today, they're $6.7 trillion. Nobody can get their hands around with these kind of numbers. You can't even begin to get your hands around what these numbers mean. Spending would be expected to be higher today than in 2020 regardless. Still, if it had stayed in its pre-pandemic trend, which was already way too high, it would be about $1 trillion lower today. Both Trump and Harris, Republicans, Democrats, are partially responsible for the blowout, and they ought to have had some ideas how to clean it up. There's a case for significant deficit spending during an emergency, but when the emergency is over, it's supposed to stop. The U.S. ran enormous deficits during World War II, then cut them when the war was won. But I want to get to some of these numbers down here, just so you have an idea. Over the next 30 years, the Congressional Budget Office projects Social Security, Medicare, and the borrowing required to fund them will add $124 trillion to the national debt. The rest of the federal budget is roughly balanced over the time horizon. The $124 trillion is almost certainly an underestimate because it is based on CBO assumptions that interest rates will never rise above 3.8% in the next 30 years. Well, we're above that now and going to be above that for quite some time, I would suspect. All the extra government borrowing will increase pressure on interest rates. For each percentage point above 3.8, tack on another $40 trillion or so. The assumption that the rest of the budget will be roughly balanced implies that current law won't change. That means no recessions, no unforeseen need to increase military spending, no major new spending programs without spending cuts. It also means that all the stuff that's scheduled to expire next year and the year after that actually expires in full, never to return. And that's not going to happen. There's no way of knowing what world affairs will throw at the U.S. over the next 3 decades. And at least some, if not all, of the policies set to expire will be extended. Fully extending the TCJA, the largest item, would, depending on the estimate, add between $3 trillion and $5 trillion to the debt over the next 10 years. That's small compared to the impact of entitlements, but it's still significant. Ideally, the government should cut more than that much in spending to compensate, good luck, for the lost revenue and begin to chip away because the spending is already too high. And I'll share this article, but when you start to get your hands around the numbers and you understand where we are financially, fiscally in this country, there's no one person that's going to walk into anywhere and be able to fix this. It's just not possible. And it's getting to the point, where does it get to the point where you're to the point of no return? And now you're Venezuela. And it's not unreasonable to think that that day could come. And every one of these people who goes in front of Congress that's asked about this, they say, well, we think we're on still a sustainable path now, but nobody can get their hands around these kind of numbers. It's just absolutely crazy. So, just a couple other things quickly. Won't go through all of it, but just some headlines I'm watching. Secret Service says complacency led to security gaps in Butler. This was on Friday.
Threat environment. So in today's hyperdynamic threat environment, the mission of the Secret Service is clear. We cannot afford to fail. After reviewing the planning, event details, and coordination with partner agencies regarding the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump on July 13th, our mission assurance review is nearing its completion.
Take a look at what happened.
This was a failure on the part of the United States Secret Service. It's important that we hold ourselves accountable for the failures of July 13th, and that we use the lessons learned to make sure that we do not have another failure like this again. The Secret Service did not give clear guidance or direction to our local law enforcement partners. There were communication deficiencies between law enforcement personnel at the site. For example, the Secret Service did not co-locate its security room with local law enforcement. There was an over-reliance on mobile devices, resulting in information being siloed. We're at a pivotal moment in the history of the Secret Service and at a pivotal moment in the history of our country. And I've directed that the Secret Service embark on a significant paradigm shift that will redefine how we conduct protective operations. What occurred on Sunday demonstrates that the threat environment in which the Secret Service operates is tremendous and under constant threat. The paradigm shift will be a driving force to move the Secret Service from a state of reaction to a state of readiness. And the vision is for the Secret Service to be more agile, with the ability to escalate protection to the highest levels for numerous protectees for undetermined periods of time. We are burning through a lot of assets and resources. And that's the argument that we've been trying to show. This isn't some pie in the sky trying to say, hey, we want this now. We are not capitalizing on a crisis. So in today's hyperdynamic
that was from
the mission
Friday.
of the Secret Service is clear. We cannot afford to fail. After reviewing the planning, event details.
I don't know if you saw this clip.
We can't afford 4 more years of this. We can't.
Yeah, well, there you go. Tim's got it nailed. We can't afford 4 more years of this. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. So, a lot of people like to point out Rasmussen to me when it's good. Well, then you better point it out to me when it's not good, and this is not good. Rasmussen this morning. General election among independents, they've got Harris +5 right now, 45-40. I'll just tell you this. If those numbers are true, that is very hard to win for the Republican candidate, if those numbers were true. And again, you can't point to Rasmussen and tell me how great they are when it fits what you want to see, and then look at this and then say, oh, they're way off. But this is this morning out of Rasmussen. Harris 45%, Trump 40% among independents. Now, I haven't gone to his page to see what he says this morning. If the 2024 presidential election were held today, who would you vote for if the candidates were Kamala Harris and Donald Trump? Arizona, Trump 50-45. Georgia, Trump 49-45. North Carolina, Trump 49-47. Important New York Times article on likely voters. What really surprises many is that some people who say they're not likely to vote end up voting. That's one reason ground games matter so much. Well, we were just talking about ground games. So, yeah, that's very tough for a Republican to win if they're -5 with independents. And there you go. As Steve Day says, there's no way we can win if this happens. All right, let's see. Let's see what else is going on here. A lot of dumb voters out there. I think Trump has a few more resources than you do, Damon. I'm not really sure what that means. I'm sure he does. The question is he using them? Not whether he has them. We know he has them. The question is, what are they doing with them? Patricia says, I see Trump Vance signs, no Harris signs. Gary says, fake polls give false hope. Vote. Same person. Damon, why do you always seem so happy when the news is bad for the Republicans? Well, I'm not. Define happy. What? Because I report on it? What would you like me to do? Not report on it? Those numbers can't be true. No way. I mean, true or not, I don't know. But again, you can't point to a pollster that you say you love, and then when he puts something out that you don't agree, go, oh, no, they're wrong. I mean, take them for what they say. I mean, you know, either you trust them or you don't trust them, but you can't trust one when it fits your narrative, and then when it doesn't, say, oh, no, it's way off. Let's hear what they're talking about here.
There's more to be done, but I do think the rate cut that the Feds made last week will help people, and I do think that that prices are coming down Unemployment's really low. Inflation's the lowest it's been since 2021. So they're making progress, and they know that they need to do more, and she knows she needs to do more. But I do think people will remember. It's just how much will they remember in 6 weeks? Like, will gas prices come below $3? Will grocery prices come down enough to make a difference? And that's yet to be seen. But I do think that the vice president has laid out that they are moving in the right direction.
On gas prices, I was home 3 weeks ago, and gas was about $3.39 a gallon in Ohio. I was home this past weekend, and gas was at $3.19 and trending to $3.09. And there is time for voters in some of these key states to see gasoline at below $3 a gallon before November.
Yeah, and obviously it's a lot lower than what it got to at one point during the Biden administration. So that's probably good.
True story.
Probably good for them. But the problem is, and I think it's great that Kamala Harris is going to come out with some more economic plans that she, but the problem with her is that this whole thing about opportunity economy has not really sort of worked out very well for people. She has been vice president for the past 3 years. And when Donald Trump talks about these things, he talks about things that people understand. He talks about oil, drilling for oil. He talks about taxes, which people pay. He talks about regulations, which people realize makes things more expensive.
Exactly,
and has done a lot to bring us all this inflation. And he just has a vivid way of talking about it, and plans that people know actually have worked in the past. And people look at where they are now and where they've been for the past 3 years, and they're like, I'm not buying that.
There's a track record there.
So there's been few interviews, obviously, that everybody knows.
Yeah. So again, they're gonna obviously do everything they can. And as Rob pointed out in that comment I just put up, when you drain the strategic petroleum reserve to artificially lower gas prices as much as you can, maybe there's some people who actually buy the reason that gas is coming down, but we all know why it's coming down. And it's not because they love to say Biden has been better on energy and we're doing more drilling and we're doing more exporting of oil. They use this concocted way of looking at the numbers and like public leases, private leases, and then they come out and they say, oh no, we're doing more now than we were under Trump. I mean, it's just total nonsense. But the general public listening to it, they're not going to go do any research on how they concoct this cockamamie numbers that they use. It's like the jobs numbers. And then they sneak in the fact that, 800,000 of them weren't real. Oh, okay.
But that's the setup that we're looking at right now, which is a fundamentally different scenario than we have been in the past few years of tighter policy, right? It's theoretically a good thing, but how much has been priced in?
You guys want to take a quick look at shares of Intel and Qualcomm, of course, over the weekend.
All right. Nothing really going on there. All right, let's take a look at some of the other comments. Anything else? I didn't really see much more this morning that caught my attention. I saw some of the Sunday shows that, boy, they're just still focused on this guy, huh?
You're not focused on the things that we talked about standing up there about our economy. You're not focused on those things. I am. I'm going to remain focused on those things. And you better understand, I am coming after CNN full throttle. But we have got to put the people first. And in order to put the people first, we've got to concentrate on this campaign. And that's exactly what we're going to do. That's exactly what we're going to do. Thank you. No more questions. No more questions. Hold on just a second. No more questions because you're from Greensboro. And in Greensboro.
Now, Robinson may be talking about the fact that we're focusing on that, but I can tell you there are plenty of Republicans in North Carolina who are as well concerned about what the K-file investigation as well as a significant staff departure means.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this whole Robinson thing, honestly. I mean, that's the first time I've heard his, I don't even know if that was a denial or I didn't hear the beginning of it, so I don't know what that was. But you see the people right there, speaking of, who have left the campaign. mean, just as we talked about, I think the other day, it seems wild to think that somebody could be using their email that's basically, again, I don't know exactly what the email was, but to just make it so easy to know that it was you and to use this email amongst all these supposed places, websites that he went to and made these comments. Just seems kind of wild. All right. It doesn't look like there's much more going on. Doesn't seem plausible. So, all right, folks. So tonight, like I said, President Trump is speaking in Indiana. I believe he's slated to start at 7, but as we know, sometimes those things get pushed a little bit. So if he starts within the 7 o'clock hour, we will join you after the president is done. So whether that's at 8, which maybe it will be if he starts on time, or probably more like somewhere in the 8 o'clock hour, we will join you when the president is done speaking in Indiana. And always look forward to see what the president's going to say. If he's going to change up his speech, talk about some other things, we'll watch that tonight. And then me and the boys will be with you after that at some point, hopefully in that first 8 o'clock hour. And then we will stay with you, obviously, until 10. So that'll be live from Studio 6B tonight on a Monday night. We hope to see you there again. This morning's stream is brought to you by our friends over at MyPillow, MyPillow.com. I should have said that earlier. Of course, Mike Lindell and the great stuff they have over at MyPillow. If you're going to shop there in the next coming months, obviously, as we head into the holiday season, we appreciate it if you use code LFS6B. And, of course, if you do, you can send in your receipt showing that you used our code. And, of course, pick something from our merch store at livefromstudio6b.com, absolutely free. We've got the election season shirt that we've been giving out now for the entire year. We've got some other great shirts that people have requested. You can pretty much request any shirt you want from the site. We'll fulfill it. And that's if you use code LFS6B while you're shopping at MyPillow, and we appreciate it. It's a great way to support Mike, great way to support Live from Studio 6B. So we appreciate when you do that. And of course, if you're watching on socials, make sure you hit the like and subscribe. Subscribe to all channels. YouTube just crossed over 15,000. Love to see that push towards 20. Facebook 117. Want to push that towards 120, 125. So make sure you follow us across all our social medias at LFS6B. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. And then I will see you tonight, like I said, somewhere in that 8 to 9 o'clock hour after President Trump is done in Indiana, and we will see you then. All right? Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.